Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel or page. I'm hoping to upload this on Instagram, all going well. So if you were new here and you're wondering who I am, I'm Mand. So I had put up a story about a week or so ago on about people's spiritual journey and what it may look like to some people, and then I realized I never talked about my own spiritual awakening or how I really got into this. So this is what this story is about. It's pretty much my own journey and my own awakening as such, or I'm sure there's other terms for it, but we're just going to call it spiritual awakening so that, everyone understands what I'm on about. So, excuse me. I'm hoping to keep this under 15 minutes so that we can upload this to Instagram and not everyone has to go and try and go to YouTube. So I have a few notes here, so if you hear me rustling paper, it's so that I keep on track. But what I do want to say is everybody's journey is going to look completely different. This is just personally how I experienced it and what it was like for me. It's been a long time since I've sat in front of a camera like this, so if I'm looking off this way, I apologize. I forget that I need to look here. Anyway, so I will talk about what I experienced, but I also have to quickly state the events that happened before I'll say, plunged into my spiritual awakening. So I was around 19 when I got into a toxic relationship that taught me a lot of life lessons. I learned a lot from it. I was definitely challenged. And within that period of my life, I lost complete sense of who I was and what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. And so I was around 19 when that happened. I had dropped out of college and I felt like an absolute failure in life. I felt I had no direction. I felt like nobody understood me. Even though I was surrounded by amazing friends and family, I had never felt so alone. And I pretty much had this kind of pity party for myself because I had this whole, well, it's happening to me and not for me, if that makes sense. It was more of, why do all these bad things happen to me, instead of realizing that when you get into law of attraction, that I was probably, looking back now, manifesting quite a lot of that into my life. So while I plodded along and I was in a relationship that I wasn't happy in, I was absolutely miserable. And that doesn't mean like that period in my life didn't have happy moments. It did. It just was one of those eye-opening periods of my life. And I remember feeling really sad and really lost, and things I used to love I didn't love anymore. I didn't have a passion for, I always had like a passion for art and things. I didn't have a passion for that anymore. Or even reading, I didn't want to do that anymore. I just existed. That was it. I went in, did whatever I had to do throughout the day, and that was it. And so I continued down that path. And I remember it was just like, I think some people call it the dark night of the soul. It felt like that. And it definitely felt like that. It felt like I was going around in the dark, searching for a light switch that I had no idea where it was, but I was just going around in circles, hoping that this cycle that I was constantly repeating, that it would eventually change. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I, in one way, had expectations that certain people in my life would change. They would change for the better. I could help them. I could make things better. And sometimes that can be a really hard pill to swallow, because some people don't want to change. And I had to realize that pretty quick. That some people didn't want to change and they were happy enough plodding along doing their own thing, and that's their own business, and that is fine. But I also remembered I did not sleep very well. I would be awake all night looking at the ceiling. I also experienced really bad sleep paralysis around that time. I definitely have a YouTube video on that. So if you haven't experienced that, you're very lucky, but I had it so often that I was actually scared to go to sleep at night, because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have another one of these episodes. And I just felt so lost. I genuinely just had no direction. And throughout this whole experience, this whole time, I journaled everything. Journaling was one thing that helped me release whatever it was that I was feeling, that I couldn't, that I felt that I couldn't express. Okay, so, you know, I just didn't want to talk about it as such. I wrote everything down, all my feelings, my thoughts, whatever it was. And it was actually a few months before my 22nd birthday. I don't want to say it was like a light bulb moment, but I remember I was so tired of being sad and being down all the time and constantly beating myself up about how my life was this way and it should have been that way and I was a failure and I was no good and I didn't deserve this. I wanted to change that thought pattern. And I didn't want to have a pity party anymore. And so I knew, because around that time I started getting into The Secret, so the law of attraction and manifesting. And while I always knew I was different and I was into a lot of things that other people weren't really into, I didn't have any friends that were into spirituality. So, like, you know, nobody I knew was reading cards or anything like that or had any interest in it. And I just always was drawn to it. Even as a kid, I loved bringing home shiny rocks from the beach. And in one way, it can be one of the most loneliest experiences, because not all of us come from families who have people that are into it. I know I don't. They're open-minded to it, but none of them would be as into it as I am. So I remember, anyway, for my 22nd birthday, no, before my 22nd birthday, I knew things had to change. I knew certain people in my life weren't going to change, and I had to be the change. If I wanted to do better and I wanted to get more out of life and not be held back, I had to make the decision to cut some people out. And at that time, that was very hard for me to do. It was very hard to make that decision and to be strong enough to not repeat the same cycle. And I knew I was being sent the same lessons until I learned that lesson so I could move on to the next. And so I did. I had to. I really had to do that. And it was one of the hardest years I ever put down. So I don't want people being scared thinking, oh my God, an awakening is going to last me a whole year. No, not necessarily. Some people do, but it's not necessarily. I'm not sure how long my awakening was, but I just knew that I had to take time for myself, and I didn't care how long it took. I knew I just had to do it. I craved just being on my own at this stage. I had to cut ties with certain people. They just were holding me back, and certain things as well. I had to unlearn a lot of things that were what I thought I believed in, and then they weren't. And the universe would still send the same lessons to make sure that I was sure about this. And so, I think willpower comes into it this as well with your awakening, to make sure that you're not going to repeat the same cycle, because sometimes you just have to break the cycle. And I remember I just felt tired all the time, even though I had made these changes and I knew I was on the right path. I was just tired. I was drained. And I still felt lonely, and I couldn't understand why I still felt lonely. And I started questioning everything. Everything was questioned with me. I questioned everything. And then I started diving into the law of attraction and how changing your mindset, and how could I become a more positive, better person. And I had fears then as well, because I'm like, if I really dive into this, will I be supported? Because I knew how it felt to have people make smart comments on certain things that I was into, and I remember just going, no, I don't want nothing to do with that anymore. And I spent so much time alone during that period. Like, I stopped going out every weekend. I used to be out all the time, any excuse to go out drinking. I was out, I was there. I stopped doing that. Occasionally I might go out, but I stopped because the drink made me numb to the feelings that I didn't want to feel. And I knew at some point I was going to have to face them, and I was going to have to feel them. So I stopped doing that, and I started looking into the law of attraction and watching videos on all different aspects of things, and how practicing gratitude would change. And I remember watching The Secret and going, so it's literally just about changing your mindset. And okay, yeah, there's more to it, but roughly. And in that time of spending time alone, and just myself, I grew to understand so much more about me and what I was into and what I really wanted to do. Now, it still took a few years for me to go after, because there's such a mass awakening now that things are so much more available, but back then it wasn't. But I saw a lot of it would be self-taught now for myself. And I just knew I had to keep plodding forward. No matter how tough it got, I just had to keep moving. And I used to write my gratitudes every morning, and I stopped that chatter, that doubt in my mind that, because I was afraid of being judged, I'm going to be supported, and all that kind of self-doubt. And then I found, once I started practicing gratitude and looking around and all the things that I had to be grateful for, I found that I was happier. And I also then got my first proper oracle deck, which was a Doreen Virtue one. It's an Archangel one, I think it was. And then I remember I used to find pennies, and I used to see 1111 a lot. And I found white feathers as well, and I always have a robin visiting me, so that was another thing. And I was noticing that I was constantly getting signs, and the more I paid attention to it and the more I wrote down, I journaled everything, the more signs I got, and the more confirmation that, right, I'm obviously on the right path. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going with this anyway. That was my thing. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're just going to follow the signs and we're going to keep going. And I remember I experienced a few visitations in my dreams as well from my past loved ones. So that was very cool as well to experience. And I found, I'm just seeing here that I found a lot of people on YouTube that I would watch. I can't think of any one of them now, because I don't watch a lot of them anymore. I watch YouTube in general, but a lot of them were on like law of attraction and changing your mindset, and also witchcraft. I loved just everything I could get my hands on. It didn't have to be of just law of attraction. I loved witchcraft, angels, divination, crystals, excuse me, all those things were so, so important to me and my journey, and I wanted to learn it all. But I had no idea how to go about it and where was I supposed to go. But that comes with time. You figured that out in time. Excuse me. And I remember also here robbing some of my mom's angel books and reading as much as I could. I remember reading Angels in My Hair, and I was fascinated that this woman could see angels. And I was like, wow, that like there's really people out here that are experiencing it. But yet I still questioned everything, even though I was so highly into this, and I still am. I have such a deep love. Obviously, I'm doing this, haven't I? But I used to question everything. I think questioning everything is important anyway, but I still do. I have a healthy skepticism all the same. And I remember as well, I affect lights anyway, but they used to flicker, and I'd be like, okay. And I was like, you try and debunk it, and then it'd happen again, and I'm like, right. So I know, looking back now, I know it was my guides, my past loved ones, giving me confirmation and telling me that I'm on the right path and to follow what felt right to me. And I remember I got into meditation, but I'm like far more into it now than I was then. I found it hard to quiet my mind. So that comes with time. And so the universe was always giving me signs. And once I decided to plug in and tune into that, it opened so much for me. It took me a long time to dive deeper, but I realized we always have to stand at rock bottom. We literally have to go to rock bottom where everything genuinely falls apart. Like my life felt like it had fallen apart. I remember being on a trip with my mom to Holland and crying on the plane coming home because I didn't want to come home. I had this urge to just want to move and start all over and just not have to come home. And we have to be broken and opened up and be vulnerable with ourselves more than anything so that we can heal and rebuild ourselves to be better versions. And that can be so difficult because when you're at rock bottom, you can't see up. And that was one of the hardest things I think for me to realize was I had to get out of my own way. And while I still look back at some of my choices I made, which some I'm not proud of, I'm not, but I've also learned that had I not made those decisions, I would not be who I am today. They've definitely helped shape who I am as well. And so I also am aware that some of you might ask, is this the only awakening you had? No, it wasn't, but it was definitely the start of my journey, because spirituality it's a journey with no real destination, to be honest. It's just learning constantly and growing and expanding, and it's just so beautiful. But no, it wasn't my only awakening, because I got totally landed on my arse again 2 years after that. But that is a story for another day, because I do believe this is long enough now. I hope it has helped some of you on your own journeys, that it genuinely feels like you're going crazy and that everything is falling down around you. But I want you to know you're not crazy. And I remember I started seeing colours as well, like random flashes of colours, flickering lights. I catch things out of the corner of my eye. So all those things, I feel anyway, for me, they were part of my journey. Now I'm so used to it, I don't even think I notice it sometimes, because it's just part of who I am. It's part of my life experience here. But I do want to make it very clear that while everybody's journey is different, sometimes for majority of people who've had a spiritual awakening, it isn't this beautiful and bright experience. It comes from a very difficult place that I always really think of it as a lotus flower, where you start at the very bottom of absolute muck and grime and the whole lot, and you grow up through it. You have to go through it because there's no way around it. You just have to go through it. So I hope that kind of clears it up and kind of gives you a little insight into my own journey. While it is uncomfortable for me to talk about it, I do realize that it might help a lot of you on your own path and your own journey. And of course I'm over 15 minutes because I just like to talk. So I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you have an amazing day. This will probably be on YouTube, so don't forget to like, hit the bell, because you'll be notified when I upload, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and I'll chat to you all real soon.